Welcome back, my friends, to Sober Social. In this video, I'm going to show you how to keep it real. Keep it real. I'm going to show you how to be authentic when you come across the people, and even if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's going to help you too. And I'm even going to share with you a story that happened just a few days ago, this last weekend, where I kind of fucked this up. I didn't exactly keep it real, but I tried to redeem myself by making a social media post. So if you're interested in seeing that, follow me on Instagram. I'll put the link in the post. I just hit a rock. Alright guys, so let's get into it. Let's talk about how to keep it real. It's hot out here. And that is a good introduction into this first section, or perhaps the only section, because the two sections are really the same thing. It's just like one version is the other kind of side of this first version. But yeah, so what we're talking about here, first of all, what does it mean exactly to be real? I remember back in the day, I literally believed that when people talked about just keeping it real, or oh, just be real, like just be real, man. And when they got upset with people that are being like two-faced or manipulative or whatever, they would say, you're being fake, that person is so fake. I literally thought that they were talking about reality and non-reality. I thought that they were talking about, like, when they called me real, or if they called me fake, or if they called other people real or fake, I thought that they were saying that those people existed or didn't exist. And I was like, what the hell, what are you talking about? Like, this person's fake? Are they, like, they're not actually a human being, like they're just a robot, or they don't actually exist? Like, that was my interpretation. And of course, now that I've gotten this social education, I now understand what they're actually talking about when they say just be real or just keep it real. They're saying to be honest. And of course, what they're talking about a little bit more succinctly than that is they're saying be honest with them and be honest with other people. But in order to do that, my friend, the argument I'm going to give here is that we first and foremost have to be honest with ourselves. And I know that that sounds cliche, but if you think about it, what is the only reason that you would ever be dishonest with other people? I mean, there's perhaps some other circumstances that are less about the social skills and more about, like, I guess, like character. Like if you're being dishonest in order to achieve some sort of personal end, and you're not necessarily ashamed of that, so you're not being dishonest with yourself, but it is being dishonest with other people because you kind of have a different moral compass or whatever. Like there's probably those circumstances too, but just ignoring all of the complex additions that we could make here, let's focus on when you go, like, let's give the example of, let's say you go to the bar, my favorite context to give as an example, and you go with a friend, and this friend introduces you to a new person, and that person is super beautiful, like a beautiful girl, or it's like maybe like a very high status individual, or high status guy, or a high status girl. And because of that, you know, and the fact that you don't know them, you know your friend and you're kind of comfortable with them, but there's a ton of people there and you've never been to this bar and you don't know this person, and they're, like I said, they're very attractive or they're very high status, and you just tell that. And because of that, you're uncomfortable when you're meeting them. And so, you know, you might go for the handshake and you're like shaky. The difference between honesty with oneself and dishonesty with oneself in the context that I'm talking about here is when you see that shaking hand, you either reject it and you're like, oh shit, I gotta hide that. You know, you try your best to like get stiff because you don't want that to show, and you feel that uncomfortable, like that anxiety within yourself, and you're trying to hide that. That's dishonesty, whereas honesty would be seeing the shaking hand and just owning it. And even one step like further than that is you literally openly express the way that you're feeling, which would be like, oh, hi, so-and-so, I'm a little bit nervous right now. Like, you're making me uncomfortable, or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be that, like, you know, you don't want to say it in such a way that they become uncomfortable, but openly, forwardly expressing yourself in the way that you feel, that is being real. This honesty and forward honesty, that is one of those things where I don't really believe there's an opposite end to it. I don't think that there's really any trade-off to be openly and expressively honest, except perhaps, you know, turning away the people in your life that are not necessarily supposed to be there. That's my opinion. But, you know, I just value honesty because, I mean, I think, what else is there? You know, the truth is the truth is the truth. And if we're afraid to express it and express it forwardly, maybe there's exceptions where, like, okay, it is a very inappropriate context to be that upfront about this particular honest thing, or maybe the person or whatever. I don't know. There's probably different cases, and I know I've been there, but I'm never ever ashamed of how I feel. And if somebody were to ask me and they were like to draw out that answer in me, I'm not gonna lie. I'm never gonna fucking lie about the way that I feel or the way what I'm thinking or whatever it is. And so, the summary here is that in order to be real and offer that authenticity to people that people just are so naturally drawn to in social settings, as well as, my friend, if you're interested in being an entrepreneur and speaking to a camera and being on YouTube or being an Instagram or whatever, authenticity is what that's what people are craving in this new age that we're in. People are no longer craving what used to be respected, which is like the guru that, like, he was all educated and he had all the expertise, he had all the education, and he's kind of coming across as this perfect individual. People are no longer bought into that. They know that it's all bullshit. They know that none of us are actually perfect. None of us are actually so expert that we don't make mistakes. And nowadays, even like doctors and stuff, they're being outwitted, and the consistency that they're able to demonstrate is literally being beaten by machines and artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And you can read about that, about like IBM and Watson and stuff. So yeah, anyway, people no longer are bought into that story, and what they're really looking for nowadays is not that false perfection, but more connection. They're looking for connection, and in order to connect with somebody, they feel they have to be, I think the key word here is trust. There has to be trust. And in order for them to be trust, you have to be real with people. You have to be authentic. People are craving connection, not perfection. In order to offer that connection, in order to connect genuinely with people, we have to establish trust. And in order for that trust to be established, we have to be able to offer authenticity, our authentic, genuine selves. So that's all fine and dandy, but how exactly do we go about offering that authenticity? Well, it begins with being honest with ourselves. Now, I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious, like, oh, I already do that. But I would ask you to challenge yourself. Are you actually as fully and consistently honest with yourself as it seems like you are? And in order to do that, I want to take this example. So let's say that you're speaking with an attractive girl, and out of nowhere, she starts talking about something that really just bores you to death. Like, she's talking about some band that she likes from, back in her childhood, and she's talking about how she loved the singer's hair, or maybe she's like talking about one of the songs and how it made her feel and how that connected to something that went down with her dog that one day. And, she just goes on and on and on. You're like, oh my God, I'm not interested in this shit at all. But because you're attracted to her, you find her attractive, and you feel, this is a misconception as we know from past videos, but because you think that when you express that openly that she's going to lose attraction for you, you automatically kind of reject the natural feeling that arises within you, which is your boredom. So instead of owning up to that boredom, and then even more than that, you forwardly express it to her, not in like a mean way that hurts her feelings. Of course, you can do it in a lighthearted, fun way, but also retain that honesty. But instead of doing that, you reject it, and you kind of quietly pretend that she's more interesting than she really is. And you're trying to do that in order to, placate, or if not placate, you're afraid of stepping on her toes. But that, my friend, is being dishonest with yourself, and therefore dishonest with her, and that is the seed that is missing these three things, or it's robbing you of these three things that I just told you about. So the authenticity is not there. You're not being authentic with you, yourself, or with her. You're not establishing trust between the two of you, or at least, and even if a trust is already established, you're definitely not helping that trust, and if anything, you might even be threatening it, because it will come out. The girl will always sense it, especially girls. They're very in tune with this kind of stuff. They're emotional creatures. They feel when you're not being real with them, being real. So, it will come out, and that will be threatening that trust. And then, of course, with that lack of trust, or that threat to the trust, that connection between the two of you will disintegrate. Maybe not full force, but that is just one example of that you know, that's a behavior that could become a habit. And if it is already a habit, then I would encourage you, take a good hard look at yourself and just, you know, consider. Don't shame yourself about it. I mean, you know, we all make mistakes and we're all here to learn and grow, but just, if you are that kind of person, or if you've had those kind of experiences, take a good hard look and ask yourself, how can I best circumvent, I don't know if that's the right word, but how can I best change, you know, in order to no longer be falsely pretending to be interested in whatever I'm not interested in. Or any other examples, like, you know, maybe I'm sad and I'm pretending not to be sad, or maybe I'm super like pissed off about whatever somebody just said, but I'm too afraid to like upset them, or I'm too afraid of the appearances or whatever, you know. Being real with other people means being honest with yourself. And what is myself? It's how I feel, it's what I think, it's my opinion, and I'm not afraid. Being real means that I'm not afraid to openly express that, forwardly express that, taking the initiative to express that, assuming, of course, that it's at least enough appropriate of a situation. It's not perfectly appropriate. I'm not saying that if it's an inappropriate context, I mean, of course, I guess the word inappropriate kind of like cancels it out, but I guess, here, let me put it to you this way. Even if it's like a somewhat uncomfortable or like inappropriate time or place or people, in order to express that honesty, use your own discernment to decide, okay, is this actually a time where I should be just going ahead and like facing all of that shit and expressing the honesty anyway, or should I just go ahead and accept, like, okay, it is inappropriate enough where I do feel that and I'm not ashamed of it, and if somebody asks me, then yeah, I'll be honest, but you know, I'm not gonna like forwardly express my whatever. So you know, I'm gonna leave that discernment up to you. That is your decision and your decision alone. But okay, so I've gone ahead and I've explained all of this enough. Now, what I want to give you is what I promised you in the introduction, which is this story that happened just a few days ago where I did somewhat mess up. You know, I wasn't exactly real with myself, and so here it is. This is what happened. I went out with my brother and a couple of other people, and we went out to this brand new bar that I'd never been to before, and it was in Cheyenne, and I usually go to this other one when I'm in Cheyenne, so this was the first time I'd ever been to this bar. And in addition to it being a brand new bar, it was also a very large bar. It was a large, like by far the largest bar that I've ever been into. And in addition to that, it was during what's called Frontier Days. In Cheyenne, this is like a big deal. I know that, you know, in New York City, it's probably just like a standard Saturday night, but in Cheyenne, this is like a big deal for Cheyenne. There's tons of tourists from all over the world. And so anyway, you know, there's a way more people than there usually are at this bar, supposedly. Again, I've never, you know, it was my first time there. But anyway, I went out and I kind of like had it in my mind that I would use the typical formula that I do, which is of course going and then warming myself up slowly, going to the dance floor to, you know, just start slow, start to feel it, not talk to anyone right away, but then just like kind of warm up and get those juices flowing. But there was country music playing, and only country music playing, and I am just not a big country fan. That absolutely is an excuse, and of course I shouldn't be reliant on the dancing in order to warm myself up, but that's what happened. So I was kind of had that in my mind, and it didn't end up working out that way. So what ended up happening was I kind of like separated myself from my brother, not because of any conflict or anything, but just because I wanted, you know, if I was gonna fail, or, you know, not fail, but, you know, just like have this stifling that did end up happening, I wanted it to be on my own. I wanted to own it and be independent on my own, like, failure, not like, you know, follow my brother around like a little puppy. So anyway, I separated myself from him, and I ended up kind of like walking through the bar and just doing my best to acclimate myself to the environment. But there was just so many people, so much noise, it was so much novelty, you know, everything was just so fucking new, and it felt so uncomfortable that I ended up actually excusing myself finally to just go out and get a breath of fresh air. I was like, oh my gosh, dude, this is too much. I need some space. You know, I need a little bit of quiet, just a little bit. So I was planning on, after I left, I just went out to the very front, and I just kind of sat on the curb, and I was planning to go back in because they give you a little like mark or whatever after you pay the cover charge. But when I tried to go back in and show them that mark, I realized that I had washed off, unfortunately. So they're like, yeah, you know, you can get back in, but you're gonna have to pay the cover charge again. I was like, oh my gosh. So that was another thing, and I was like, finally, I was just like, okay, screw it. I'm throwing in the rag. I know that this, you know, if I was a perfect guy, if I was perfect, like, if I was perfectly being authentic with myself, you know, I mean, initially, of course, before I even went outside, I would have just been like, okay, I'm stifled. That's okay. I'm gonna go and approach some people anyway, and just own up, like, okay, I'm new to this bar. I'm nervous. I don't go out much. Blah 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 blah. That would have been perfect honesty. And then, of course, the redemption side, when, you know, she said, oh, you're gonna have to pay the cover charge again. The perfect, like, action, I suppose, would have just been, okay, whatever, you know, pay it again, and then go back in, and then just like get back into it, just start flowing, and own it up, or own up to yourself. So, but anyway, what actually ended up happening is, instead of that, I went back to the car and I waited. I just waited. I didn't, you know, I didn't complain. I didn't beat myself up. I didn't like text my brother frantically like, oh, please come back out, like, oh, no, I don't want to be alone. Like, no, I was perfectly fine. I just was like, it's too much. It's too much. And I am okay with the fact that it's too much. And so at least, you know, the very least, that's kind of the point that I want to make here. Ideally, I would have been honest with the way that I was feeling while I was walking through the bar, and then just like taken that and shared it with somebody. And if they accepted it or if they rejected it, it didn't really matter, as long as I was kind of like warming myself up to the fact that when you share it with people, you're basically training yourself that you don't have to hide. So whether you're feeling good or you're feeling bad, it is what it is. You know, it is what it is. And so whether people like it or not, it is what you are. It is who you are in that moment. And so that would have been the ideal. But at least, you know, when I got back out to the car, I did, I did my best to kind of turn the whole situation into a meaningful one, at the very least, by sharing that social media post, which, of course, as I already alluded to, it is on my Instagram. So if you want to check that out, please go ahead and follow my Instagram. It's in the description, in the description below the video. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the story that I had for you now. And yeah, I guess I'll kind of give a brief summary. Authenticity is what people are craving nowadays. They don't want perfection, and that goes for whether you're just working on your social skills, or if you're interested in being an entrepreneur, or any other kind of, like, I mean, even if you're like looking for employment, you know, if you go into an interview, guess what? Authenticity is valuable there too. So I mean, this is a universal principle that is absolutely critical for your success. And so that is the case, and in order to offer that to people, you have to be okay with who and what you are. And in order to do that, you know, you have to, there can't be shame with what you're feeling, with what you're thinking. And I guess, you know, the best like tip that I can give you in order to get there is just practice forwardly expressing whatever it is that you do feel in those situations where it's not exactly comfortable. Prove to yourself slowly but surely, you know, you don't have to go full force and like do something crazy and then just like blow yourself out of the water and you know, make it like this traumatic experience and you never go back to it. But slowly prove to yourself with little steps that as you are real with people, nothing bad generally is going to happen. I know that there's exceptions, but most of the time, you're, if anything, going to attract the girl more. You're going to earn the trust of the guy more. You know, it's like authenticity is the truth. It is real, and that is why it is so valuable. It is valuable inherently, and so you don't have to prove like that your authenticity is better than somebody else's, or that your authenticity is of value. It is of value because it is authenticity. Does that make sense? It is good because it is good. Like I know that yeah. So that is the that's the summary, guys. I appreciate you checking in, and I will see you. I feel like I'm rushing now. Thank you, guys, and I will see you next week.